on the abolition of government. In the following text, we will attempt to create a list of tools or instructions to aid in the attainment of the abolition of government. Before we continue, we should establish precise definitions of the words we are using so as to eliminate any possible confusion. The key terms we seek to further flesh out are government and abolition. Government. Noun. 1. The political direction and control exercised over the actions of the inhabitants, members, citizens of communities, societies, and states. Direction of the affairs of a state, community, etc. Political administration. 2. The form or system of rule by which a state, community, etc. is governed. 3. The governing body of persons in a state, community, etc. Administration. 4. A branch of service of the supreme authority of a state or nation, taken as representing the whole. Abolition. Noun. 1. The act of abolishing. 2. The state of being abolished, annulment, abrogation. 3. The act of officially ending or stopping something, to completely do away with something. We will adopt the above as a general format of definition and exposition for any other words or phrases that the author feels may lead to any potential misunderstandings and misconceptions throughout the entirety of this text. For those words not explicitly defined, it should be stated that the author intends that they be understood as they were generally defined during the 1960s and 1970s. Government is at its root a system of control directed over the actions of a larger group of individuals by a smaller group of individuals. This system is based ultimately in force, as government is generally taken as a supreme authority. Though there are many differing and various types of government, ranging from democratic to republican to monarchical to socialist, they all exist and operate through some form of force or violence, be it direct or indirect, with most often opting for the latter. Regardless of its expressed goals and wishes, they all, when reduced to their most base expression, rely ultimately on their ability to use violence as a means to attain consent. There is not a single form of government that is immune to this truth, as it is a core principle in government's existence as a concept. Government as a system of control is inherently violent, and as such is incapable of understanding any other type of communication. For this reason, any challenge to its perceived authority is taken as an act of violence, even if it is simply non-violent non-compliance. All interaction with government as a system is predicated on the use or disuse of violence. Every government action is set in whether or not violence is being instigated or abated. Conversely, every action that a government or its representatives takes is always a violent one. It is only when the government ceases to act that it demonstrates nonviolent behavior. Control over any sizable group of people by any smaller group of individuals is always done through some form of violence. Violence is not restricted here to mean the use of arms or direct physical violence, as is so often taken to mean. If a government conducts psychological warfare in the form of intense or even subtle propaganda, this is indeed a form of violence enacted against the target population. Simply because said government conducts these attacks against what it claims is its own people, does not somehow magically reverse the reality and turn an attack into a defense. All this being understood, it stands to reason that government should be antithetical to any society of people claiming to support the ideals of freedom and liberty. As the two terms are not compatible, it makes sense that a free people are not governed and a governed people are not free. Nevertheless, many in our current paradigm often fall prey to the obnoxious shouts and bellowing of those who in their ignorance espouse the sanctity of government as a necessity to freedom and liberty. For who will protect our sacred freedoms if not a powerful government empowered with the rights to defend us from those who would seek to see those rights violated? Is the common defense for the creation of governmental systems, the erection of which always entail a curtailing of those aforementioned sacred liberties in the interest of increased security. It goes without saying that this idea is patently and wholly based in error. One does not increase one's liberty by ceding one's freedom to a system of control, especially one based in violence. Now that we have a thorough understanding of how government is inherently based in violence, and thus can never be assumed to be legitimate, we can move forward to understanding how it is we go about abolishing it and protecting ourselves from its resurgence. The first and chief tool in our assortment of implements for dismantlement is integrity. Here we define integrity as follows. Integrity. Noun. 1. Adherence to moral and ethical principles. Soundness of moral character. Honesty. 2. The state of being whole, entire, or undiminished. 3. Principled, sincere. Deprived of integrity, none of the following tools will function properly, and ultimately the caustic construct we call government will rebuild itself from the bits and pieces left about if we try to deconstruct, lacking it. Without integrity, no amount of intelligence will result in the abolition of government. Having integrity is an individual characteristic that is not intrinsic in any one group of people specifically, but all humans are capable of expressing it independently as well as within their respective groups. It is grounded in our very nature as higher-thinking organisms, by virtue of our ability of critical thought and reflection. This capability entails an adherence to the principle of non-aggression, which stipulates that the initiation or instigation of force by one or more individuals against one or more other individuals is never justified, and therefore illegitimate as a means of action. Integrity is consequently dependent on adherence to the non-aggression principle. With integrity in hand, we are then capable of safely picking up our second tool, intelligence, without harming ourselves or others. Intelligence without integrity becomes like a weapon in the hands of a nescient child. Sooner or later, someone will get hurt. Intelligence. Noun. 1. Capacity for learning, reasoning, understanding, and similar forms of mental activity. Aptitude in grasping truths, relationships to reality, facts as opposed to fictions, meanings, etc. 2. Manifestation of a high mental capacity. 3. The ability to learn or understand things, or to deal with new or difficult situations. 4. The ability to apply knowledge to manipulate one's environment, or to think abstractly, as measured by objective criteria, as in tests. Through our use of intelligence, we are able to distinguish between what is authentic and what is counterfeit. This tool gives us the ability to evaluate our situation and determine what the proper course of action is. It allows us to function on a higher level of activity from those organisms of the lower mental orders. Without intelligence, we have a very shallow scope with which to operate in the world. It grants us access to the tool organization, which permits individuals to act in concert for the attainment of mutually desired goals. Our range of movement is drastically limited by virtue of our physically weak stature in comparison with many of the organisms that we share our environment with. Organization. Noun. 1. The act or process of organizing, or to form as, or into, a whole consisting of interdependent or coordinated parts, especially for united action. 2. A group of persons organized for some end of work, association. 3. The act or process of planning and arranging the different parts of an event or activity. Our tool belt is growing, and organization is a vitally important addition. Integrity guides our intelligence, and our intelligence mobilizes our ability to organize. Organization is one of the most powerful tool-turned-weapons in the arsenal of the construct we term government. It is what grants a relatively small group of individuals the facade of actual power. Like the fish who group together in an attempt to frighten the much larger fish that might eat of them individually, government and its representatives adopt the same tactic and use it to frighten the much larger whole of the population into subservience. It is only through sabotaging, impairing, or altogether disarming the rest of the population of this tool, that government is able to continue its illusion. Separating the whole against itself is one of the, if not the chief methods of control in all government handbooks around the world. Everything is easier to handle in parts. The smaller the parts, the easier it is to handle. The final tool we pick up to add to our collection is the end result of the preceding tools. It is built with the acquisition of the previous tools and put into use through their possession. Without them, this tool is virtually useless, and will, much like intelligence, lacking integrity, and organization, lacking both, lead to pain and suffering if utilized alone. The tool I am here referring to is action. Action. Noun. 1. The process or state of acting or of being active, a state of existence, progress, or motion. 2. Involving physical effort, causing activity or change, capable of exerting influence, as opposed to passive. 3. An act that one consciously wills and that may be characterized by physical or mental activity. 4. The bringing about of an alteration by force or through a natural agency. 5. An act of will. Through action, all of the above-mentioned tools come to life. They are made manifest in our physical reality through the use of action. When we put into action the organization of thoughts and ideas, developed through the use of our intelligence, applied with integrity, we can accomplish anything which can be accomplished. It is with all these tools in hand that we will be able to dismantle the construct of violence dubbed government. Missing just one of them will leave us wanting in our task if we attempt to disassemble it. As we stated in the beginning, government only understands the language of violence. It can only communicate through the use or threat of violence. It stands to reason that any attempted dismantling of it will be met with violence. This much has been demonstrated time and time again throughout history. Governments relish in reliving that history and spare us none of the gory details when feeding us its narrative. We are forever reminded of the evils that the other government is guilty of, rarely encouraged to point out the realities of our own government's evil. As if such things as the other and our own governments exist. There is no such thing as an individual's government outside of themselves. Those claiming to possess such a thing are either willfully ignorant of their situation or criminally intent on fooling and misleading those around them into believing in their fiction. There is no American government. There is no British government. There is no European government, no Russian government, and no Chinese government. These are but so many fictions for the same exact thing, differing only in degree. That thing is illegitimate control based in violence. In time, individuals from all around the world will realize that government in all its varied forms is poison to the human race. It is a vile construct used by a very small percentage of us to prey on, leech off, and more importantly, destroy many of our most precious and cherished possessions, chiefly our relationships with those we love dearly. This has been the author's attempt at encapsulating a short list of tools with which the reader may use to defend him or herself against the transgressions of government. It does not propose to be complete, nor does it intend to be the end-all, be-all on the subject of the abolition of government. It is the author's contribution to the ongoing conversation, and its goal is to engage the reader in constructive thought and dialogue. Thank you for having a listen and sharing your time.